Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1688, and today's date is October 3rd, 2018, and the title of the episode is The Beginning Indicator That Signals the End of the Fed. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, at this point, we understand that everything is in motion. There are many different plans, but there's one umbrella plan that they're working on. And the umbrella plan is to get rid of the central banking establishment. And what they're doing right now is they're taking out certain operatives. And eventually they will end up removing the central bank. We need to remember that Trump, when he took office, he took Andrew Jackson, he hung Andrew Jackson on the wall inside of his office. And we need to understand that Andrew Jackson, he campaigned on getting rid of the central bank. And that's exactly what he did. Of course, they tried to assassinate him, but it didn't work. And for many, many years, there was no central bank. And I believe that's why Trump has taken Andrew Jackson and put him on the wall. We also have to understand Trump did something when he wasn't yet president, while he was running. He did something that almost no other president has done. Actually, I take that back. There was one other president, but didn't comply completely. And we're going to get into this a little bit later, but I first wanted to start with the economy here and talk about what is happening and what we see breaking down and why the manipulation is so important. Remember, the economy right now is being manipulated using the central bank, the deep state manipulation guide. And they're continuing their process to make the economy look fantastic. Of course, they've taken the manipulation and they revved it up to make it look even better than it was before. And they're trying to make the economy look absolutely incredible. There's a reason for all this. They need to do this because they're getting ready to take down the central bank system. And they're preparing to control the narrative. That's what this is about. To control the narrative, you need to maneuver your way in so the mainstream media, the deep state, can't blame you for bringing down the economy. And this is exactly what Trump, the Patriots, this is what they're doing right now. They're manipulating everything. So this way, the deep state, the mainstream media, can't turn around and say, oh, it was because of your policies. And that's what we're seeing. Now, when we look at this data like ADP, we see that September saw a rebound. Now, August was completely revised to a plus 168,000. They fiddled with the numbers and they got the September numbers up to 230. They expected 184. And this is the strongest monthly job gain since February. Now, a lot of the jobs were service jobs. Now, we understand that that manufacturing hasn't been brought back to the United States. There's a couple manufacturers here and there in the United States, but millions and millions of people are completely out of work because a lot of the factories were moved out of this country. This was the globalist deep state plan. And it's going to take some time to bring them back. But you need to set up the infrastructure. You need to set up the agreements before you can bring everything back. And that's what we're doing right now. Getting rid of the TPP, renegotiating the NAFTA agreement, which I believe is going to be renegotiated once again. I think they're going to bring this up and eventually completely do away with it and probably just go with a brand new agreement. But it was a little too difficult in the beginning because Congress had to get involved to unwind this. And at the time, Trump and the Patriots, they didn't have the power to do this. So what we're seeing right now is everything is being prepped for when we move out of this central banking system. And we can see a lot of fluctuations in the stats and what's really going on. I mean, look at U.S. service economy. I mean, this is all over the place. Market U.S. service PMI dropped to 53.5, lowest since January. ISM U.S. service explodes to 61.6, the highest since August of 1997. Market U.S. manufacturing rose to 55.6, the highest since May. And ISM U.S. manufacturing dropped to 59.8. I mean, these numbers are reporting the opposite on the same things. It's absolutely crazy. But when we look at what is happening at the level of the people's economy. And I'm not talking about all these surveys and all these other statistics and things like that. I'm talking about real hard evidence that there's something wrong with the economy. Remember, this is not a people's economy. I know people want this economy to get better. If we make this economy better, we're still stuck with the central bank. The central bank is still going to issue debt. It's going to loan it to the government. The people are going to have to pay taxes to pay for this debt. The value of the dollar is going to continually decrease. This is not a system for the people. We need to break free of this. But when we look at real data, we can see that the inner workings of this central bank economy is completely falling apart. Over 20 major retailers have filed for bankruptcy since the beginning of last year. And in 2018, most likely we're going to break this record, and we're getting very, very close. I mean, think about it. Retail giants, Sears, JCPenney's, Toys R Us, Brookstone, Mattress Firm, either file bankruptcy or they're headed towards bankruptcy, and they're just a hair length away from being bankrupt. Mattress Firm has approximately about 3,000 brick and mortar locations, and a lot of the stores are being closed down right now. Brookstone, it seems like Brookstone had an outlet in every mall. I mean, I remember when I was younger, every time you go to the mall, you could see Brookstone. Well, they filed for bankruptcy, and all the remaining mall stores will be shut down. Sears, they don't like to call it bankruptcy, but they're bankrupt. JCPenney, same thing. They're drowning in debt. It's a complete and utter disaster. Bed Bath & Beyond, not bankrupt just yet, but their sales are continually declining, and it's disastrous for them. And eventually, probably right after this holiday season, they're going to file for bankruptcy. Walmart, Target, they're doing okay right now, but they know that this holiday season is not going to be that great. And they're turning everything around, and they're going to blame it on the tariffs. Remember, in the past, they blamed everything on the weather. Then they said it was online sales. That's why Walmart wasn't doing well. That's why Target wasn't doing well. Now, all of a sudden, online sales don't matter. Now it's the tariffs. That's the reason why retail sales are not doing well. And yes, we import a lot from other countries. But if something goes up 10%, people are still going to, if people have jobs and people have money, they're still going to purchase the item. And right now, they're getting ready to explain away why their sales aren't that great. And when we see all these stores closing, we have to understand this means there's a huge vacancy rate in the U.S. The shopping malls, they hit the highest level for vacancy in 6 years. It's hit 8.6 last quarter. This is the highest since the end of 2012. So this is not a good situation. It's getting worse and worse. Now, what's very interesting, we know the stock market is at all-time highs. We know that the S&P is at all-time highs. And what is happening now is kind of scary here. Because outside of the 2000 dot-com bubble, U.S. households have never had more of their assets invested in the stock market. From the Federal Reserve's Z.1 release, we find that U.S. households had a reported 34.3% of the financial assets invested in the equity market as of the second quarter. And outside of a slightly higher reading in the fourth quarter of 2017, that is the highest level of stock investment in the 70-plus year history of the series, other than the 1999-2000 bubble. And we know what happened during that period. We went into a recession. It popped, and it was a complete disaster. And we need to look back in time, because we know once the households start purchasing all these stocks because they see that, I can make some money, and we need to understand and realize this is how the game is played. The insiders pump up the bubble. They make it seem incredible. Think of the real estate market. Think of the stock market in the past. They pump it up. They dump their stocks at the height. The household investor comes in. They purchase homes. They purchase stock. And they think this is going to continually move up and up and up. Meanwhile, the insiders know that they created this bubble. This is how the central bank works. They know it's going to come down. Look back in time. 1966, 1968, 1972, 2000, 2007, 2015. What happened? The market came down. People lost quite a bit. And this happens over and over and over. And this is a warning to everyone. And we know that this needs to stop. And this is what Trump, the Patriots, are trying to do right now. And we can see that with this New York Times article where they're going back 20 years and saying that, Trump was involved in tax fraud with his father. Of course, this is a hit piece, but it started me to think about what Trump did before he was president. When Trump was a candidate and he was running for president, he didn't want to show his tax return. Now, of course, the mainstream media and the rest gave him a lot of crap about this. And I can see why he didn't want to do this, because in his mind, he knew that these taxes, the Federal Reserve, completely illegal. I mean, think about it. When the Constitution was created, did presidents come in and show their tax return? Who was the first president that did this? Nixon. He was involved in Watergate. And to show everyone that he was on the up and up, he showed his tax return. Now, Gerald Ford, he decided he wasn't going to show his tax return. Instead, he released a public summary, which is not the same as a tax form. Now, every president since then showed his or her tax records. And, of course, when Clinton was running, she showed all her tax records. But they're meaningless because when you're going through your foundations, you can hide all that money. And when you present your tax returns, it looks like, look, I hardly make any money. Everything's on the up and up. I mean, people do this every day. They create an LLC. They run all the funds through the LLC. They might take a very small salary, and their tax returns look fantastic. But again, you don't know what's happening with the LLC, but that's something completely separate and apart. The same thing with the politicians. They use foundations. So Trump decided not to show his tax returns. And I believe this was a signal saying, I'm resisting and I object to the central bank system, the deep state system, and I am not going to abide by any of this. And I think this was the first step of letting everyone know he does not agree with the Fed, IRS, and everything else. And you can see just by that action, the mainstream media, the deep state, the central bank, they completely flipped out. Why? I mean, does showing your tax records mean that you're a good person or a bad person? It's meaningless. It doesn't show that you're a patriot. Actually, it shows the opposite, I would think. Because as we know, when did this all start to happen? In 1913. What happened then? The central bank was signed into law. Many people say that it was never really ratified. And maybe we should look into this. Maybe it wasn't. They're saying that all the states did not agree, but they went ahead with it anyhow. And the central bank, if you look back in history, I'm not going to go through the whole history, but they continually try to get into countries where they are not. And they try over and over. In the United States, for instance, it was the central bank number 1, the central bank number 2. Andrew Jackson got rid of it. Then they came up with the Federal Reserve. And they went through different names like the Federal Cartel, but that sounded illegal. Sounded like a mob type of thing. So they changed it to the Reserve to make it seem like it was part of the government, which it is not. It's a separate corporation. So just by Trump saying, no, we're not doing this, tells us that he is prepared and ready to go up against the central bank, to go up against the system. And what we're seeing right now is exactly that. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.